Thank you, Jennifer, for your talk. Before I ask for questions, I want to say something about the quote from the Avatamsaka Sutra. I'm a little tired. That Jennifer quoted, which is, if you wish to understand all Buddhas of the past, present, and future, you should understand that the universe is created by mind alone. And this has many interpretations. And you gave one interpretation, which is we create all these anxieties and fears and sort of mental states, and we're just creating them. But there's another one, which is that the process, nobody perceives things as they actually are. There's a complex process, and I said this on the retreat also, there's a complex process by which our different cells in our bodies receive various forms of stimulation, and then those forms of stimulation send signals to other cells, and then they somehow get into our brain, and then our brain somehow puts them together, and then that's the universe that we live in. And I mentioned that I have this weird form of color blindness I only discovered a few years ago, which is, it's called blue-yellow, but what it means is that certain shades of green I see as blue, is what that means. Stan and I used to argue for years about whether we had a blue house or a greenhouse, and it turns out that we did have a greenhouse. I just didn't know it, but then we repainted it, so. So that's another sense. But then there's another sense, a third sense, which is that everything is already mind. That mind inheres in everything, and I always say this water bottle has mind. Also, this water bottle is Buddha nature. They're slightly, if you want to get really, they're slightly distinct, the notion of mind and Buddha nature and so on and so forth, but we're not philosophers in here, we're practitioners. But that everything is alive, that things are not, dumb as a rock. The rock is not dumb. The rock is rock, and it has rock mind. So that sense also. And the Buddha rather, who really sort of exemplifies this is Vairocana, the cosmic Buddha that imbues every cell, every atom, every bit of space in the universe. And in the morning bell chant, there's this wonderful line that translates as Vairocana has no fixed place. So instead of the notion of one thing that is everywhere, it's more like this universal thing is always moving. It has no fixed place, which I always really like. Yeah. So I just wanted to say that. My little professor hat. Are there any questions? Yes.
Okay, so, and you've mentioned this before, but I think it perhaps is still a good question, is that yes, everything is created by mind alone, except for there are some things that I didn't create. They really did happen. I mean, I may label something as
your mind.
What did you say?
I didn't say your mind.
Well, everything is created by mind alone, whether it's my mind or whether it's a collective mind, whatever. But I guess that so the example that I would give, several, but the one that I would give is in the past with some teachers, not in the quantum school, I have said, ask questions about the male-female issue in Buddhism, which seems to be, traditionally the teachings are not always kind to women, that we know about, that's repeated over and over and over. And sometimes frequently told, well, but there is no male or female, so that's just a creation of your mind. Well, I don't know about that. You know, so it's like almost that we could
That's
use.
called gaslighting. I wouldn't pay any attention to that. That's just called gaslighting. So don't pay attention to it. So in Buddhism, we talk about the two truths, the absolute and the relative. So there's the absolute, that's where no gender. And there's the relative, which is that people take on certain gender roles. Some of them are born into it, some of them move into it, some of them have it imposed on them, take on certain gender roles in their societies. And you notice I said the absolute and the relative. The absolute and the relative are not distinct. It's not like the absolute is over there and it negates the relative. And it's not like the relative is over here and makes the absolute irrelevant. So yes, it's true that gender is one of the things that is made by mind alone, just like this water bottle. But on the other hand, it's also true that the way society deals with gender affects people's lives in different ways, and that there is systemic abuse based on gender in different societies that takes different forms. So if you're pointing out that a lot of the Buddhist texts are very negative about women, you're completely correct. And anyone who says otherwise is just gaslighting you. So don't worry about it. Okay? Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm a mental health therapist.
Okay, I have to repeat because we don't have the microphones. You're a mental health therapist.
And a lot of people that I work with, and including myself at times, I feel like their shame and their anxiety.
So a lot of people you work with, including yourself,
Yeah.
there's shame and there's anxiety.
They feel motivated by that.
People are motivated by shame
to be a good person.
to be a good person.
So if the shame and anxiety drop,
If the shame and anxiety drop,
motivated.
then why would you be a good person?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this whole idea that we need to be a good person because otherwise someone will think bad things of us, or we might go to hell. You know, there might be actual consequences. You know, like in hell, right? That kind of thing. That we'll be judged either, you know, in this lifetime or by some deity, and et cetera, that kind of thing. The reason, you know, Buddhism takes a very different notion. I mean, yeah, there is the popular thing about karma, and you want good karma and all this stuff because people like, you know, candy. But there's a much deeper reason to be, and I'm putting in quotes, a good person. And that reason is you're not separate from any other human being. You're not separate from any animal. You're not separate from any flower. We are all deeply, deeply, deeply interpenetrating each other all the time. Everything you do has effects everywhere, and everything anyone else does has effects everywhere, including on you. So when we recognize that we're not separate, then why would we want to hurt someone? It's like, you know, the left hand doesn't say, oh, I can really hurt the right hand. You know, because they're part of the same organism. And when you recognize that we're all part of this cosmic organism, and we're so deeply, deeply connected, that's why we want to help other people. That's why we want to alleviate suffering. Okay? Yeah, nothing to do with what someone else thinks of you. Nothing to do with that. Okay? Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, Thank you for your talk, Jennifer. And I'm new to the quantum school.
Okay, you're new to the quantum school,
I've been sitting with a Soto Sangha.
sitting with the Soto Sangha.
And one thing that's really struck me from the very beginning is, and I don't mean to offend anyone, how much your share felt like what I hear at an AA meeting.
Okay, so Jennifer's talk sounded like an AA meeting.
Because, no, this is just in general, in the short talks I've heard from students, I assume you're a student, yeah. There's a level of candor and practice, it feels like these AA meetings I go to where we talk about how self manifests in the day that I'm in, or the moment that I'm in.
Okay, so in AA meetings, you talk about how self manifests in the day you're in.
Right.
And we do that too.
Yes, which is very refreshing because I sometimes am troubled by the abstract nature of, I mean, I love it too, but of Dharma talks where, what are the 5 ranks? And it doesn't seem to really apply to my life.
So the teaching you're used to
Yeah.
is much more abstract.
Yes. So my question is, where does this style of sharing, is this something that Samsung Sunim did in Korea and brought with him?
I have no idea. Did Zen Master Sung-san do this in Korea and bring it with him? I have no idea.
Okay.
I expect not, because in Korea it's very dominated by monastics. And one thing monastics will not do is tell you about their lives. They just don't do that. Even when you're friends with them, they often won't do that. These two things are not actually separate. I mean, I was talking about mind, Avatamsaka Sutra. You don't get more abstract than that. But these things, they're not separate. And I also talked about this yesterday, on the retreat, that one of the things that, as I practice, I find more and more wonderful is that the real abstraction of Buddhist teaching, which isn't, ontology and epistemology are at the heart of it, and most people don't even know what those words mean, right? Ontology is the philosophical study of what exists, and epistemology is the philosophical study of how we know that it exists. And that's the basis. The Heart Sutra, except for the last part, which is saying, wow, this is such a great sutra, and such a great mantra, it's such a great sutra, it's such a great mantra. Take away that, and 80% of it is ontology and epistemology, but it connects so intimately with our lives. Just like, why should we be ethical people? Because we recognize our true nature. So it really connects very organically. So thank you. Anything else? Because it's time to stop. Okay.